Member for Higgins.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I rise in support of the Sex Discrimination and Fair Work Respect at Work Amendment Bill 2021. This bill acts to strengthen and streamline the national legal frameworks that deal with sexual harassment. This bill is about ensuring safe and respectful relationships in the workforce. This bill builds on work commenced by my predecessor in the seat of Higgins, the Honourable Kelly O'Dwyer, who as Minister for Women commissioned the Respect at Work report in 2018. I would like to thank and acknowledge the Sex Discrimination Commissioner Kate Jenkins and her team for the wonderful work they have undertaken and which forms a significant basis for the legislative reforms being debated today. This bill is just one of the many steps on the road to equality for women, a road that seeks to ensure the justice and equality for women not just in this place, but in every workplace. Not just for the women of today, but for the women of tomorrow. It's a journey that we as women have been on since the dawn of time. It's a journey that has made great strides in some countries like Australia, but it's been a journey with many roadblocks and frustrations. It's a journey peopled with champions from all political persuasions and backgrounds. But sadly, this journey is lagging in other countries, as we've seen all too starkly in the images being relayed to us following events in Afghanistan in the last 2 weeks. Madam Deputy Speaker, the bill debated here today forms part of a long-term strategy for preventing and addressing sexual harassment outlined in the Roadmap for Respect, Preventing and Addressing Sexual Harassment in Australia in Workplaces. The bill makes important changes to the Sex Discrimination Act 1984, the Australian Human Rights Commission Act 1986 and the Fair Work Act 2009 to ensure Australia's legal frameworks are effective in preventing and responding to sexual harassment. Let me be clear. This is one of the steps on a long and necessary journey of reform that had already commenced but which has only now been hastened by the sad and disturbing event that occurred in this very building early last year. The changes made by the bill give effect, the year before to be correct. The changes made by the bill give effect to a number of different recommendations of the Respect at Work report. These include clarifying that the Sex Discrimination Act covers judges, members of parliament and ministerial staff. It also removes an existing exemption to ensure that state and territory public servants are covered by the Sex Discrimination Act. It also ensures all paid and unpaid workers, including volunteers and interns, are protected from sexual harassment under the Act by expanding the coverage of the protection from workplace sexual harassment under the Sexual Discrimination Act to include the broader concepts of worker and persons conducting a business or undertaking as defined under the Works Health and Safety Act. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, it is quite hard to hear myself talk, and it is quite an important issue, and I would ask that the members in the House perhaps could keep it down a bit.
Yeah, that's you guys.
Thanks to the member for Higgins. A little cooperation for members speaking on the floor of Parliament is always greatly appreciated. My apologies for your interruption on behalf of members at the desk. Please proceed. Member for Higgins.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As I want to say, the behaviour you walk past is the behaviour you accept. So thank you very much, Chair, for calling that out. I really welcome this last provision because I believe volunteers remain particularly vulnerable to bullying and harassment because of the often transient nature of their relationship with the workplace, and also because the OHS aspects of paid employment can be so easily often sacrificed in these less formal and often part-time workplace relationships. We need to make sure that these laws apply to everyone in the workplace, whether it's a formal interaction or a less formal one, as happens with volunteers. Madam Deputy Speaker, this bill introduces an express provision to the Act to clarify that sex-based harassment is prohibited under the Sex Discrimination Act. It does this by inserting a new object clause in the Sex Discrimination Act to make it clear for decision-makers that the Act aims to achieve equality of opportunity between men and women in addition to the elimination of sex discrimination and harassment. And Madam Deputy Speaker, this issue of equality of opportunity is particularly relevant this week when we've just had Equal Pay Day. And Madam Deputy Speaker, as a government, we believe economic empowerment is a key driver for women's safety, and I welcome the Women's Economic Security Statement, again, a legacy of my predecessor, the Honourable Kelly O'Dwyer, and one that I have spoken on many times in this House. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, there is still a national gender pay gap, unfortunately. Let me be clear, paying different amounts to men and women to do the same job has been illegal for over 50 years. And that is not the issue here. That is not what drives the gender pay gap. The gender pay gap occurs for different reasons, and there is more to do to address this. The gender pay gap relates to three key issues. Firstly, women are doing lesser paid jobs. They dominate professions such as nursing and teaching, yet men dominate more highly paid jobs, more lucrative jobs such as IT and construction. Secondly, we take more time off work to have children and raise them. We are more likely to be part-time. And finally, we are less likely to fight for a raise or a bonus. These three things have an impact on women's opportunities to be paid equally. There's much to do to ensure we give women the same opportunity as men. Elimination of sex discrimination and harassment provides a basis to help change a culture that we want to ensure women are welcome in, and in particularly these highly paid jobs and professions where men predominate. What comes to mind include law and politics. Madam Deputy Speaker, as someone quipped recently, it seems every woman can give you a story about sexual harassment, but no man knows a rapist. What that says to me is there is a disconnect about what women find acceptable and what some men do. This bill also expands the coverage of the ancillary liability provisions in the Sex Discrimination Act to include sexual harassment and a new sex-based harassment provision. There is so much to do to ensure that our society is fair and equal. Every workplace needs to be safe for each and every one. This bill clarifies that victimising conduct can form the basis of a civil action for unlawful discrimination under the Sex Discrimination Act, in addition to a criminal complaint. It also clarifies that the Fair Work Commission can, under the existing anti-bullying jurisdiction, make orders to stop sexual harassment. And it clarifies that sexual harassment can be conduct amounting to a valid reason for dismissal under the unfair dismissal provisions of the Fair Work Act. Madam Deputy Speaker, a further welcome clause in this bill, which was not actually recommended in the Respect at Work report, is a miscarriage provision. That is, if an employee or an employer's current spouse or de facto partner has a miscarriage, they are now entitled to take up to 2 days of compassionate leave. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, in Australia, each year, unfortunately, 147,000 or so women, probably underreported, experience a miscarriage. What's more, the deep and ongoing emotional effects brought by these tragic events are often underestimated and overlooked. Whilst the grief associated with miscarriage is all too common, it is most often a private grief. Miscarriage can happen at a time when a woman has not told anyone, including her family, and least of all, her employer. As I said in my first speech, there are no words to describe the loss of a child. Miscarriage can be equally devastating. I welcome this provision, which I know was championed by the member for Ryan, someone who has had personal experience with the loss and grief of miscarriage. This minimum safety net leave provides a provision to access this new form of compassionate leave. Madam Deputy Speaker, finally, I'd like to emphasise that while these reforms are most welcome, there is still significant work to do. Some of these will necessitate substantial policy consideration and consultation beyond that undertaken by the Sex Discrimination Commissioner in developing the Respect at Work report. This is particularly so with respect to the recommendation for a positive duty provision for employers to prevent sexual harassment, sex-based harassment and discrimination under the Sex Discrimination Act. Further policy consideration and consultation is required to ensure such a duty would operate effectively without increasing complexity for those seeking to use the protections. This includes an assessment against the model work health and safety laws, which already impose a positive duty on employers to protect workers from health and safety risks, including psychosocial risks such as sexual harassment. In respect of including a clear prohibition on sexual harassment in the Fair Work Act and a new complaints process in the Fair Work Commission for workers with current or historic experience of sexual harassment, I note the Attorney General has outlined with the government in the roadmap that they would review the Fair Work system once the amendments in this bill have been implemented and their impact assessed. Now, I encourage that these provisions will be important in the future, and we must stand strong to ensure that this, going forward, is actually taken into account. Madam Deputy Speaker, I would like to conclude by reading an extract from a letter I received last week from 2 students in my electorate. Dear Dr. Katie Allen, we are writing to you to thank you for taking the time to answer our questions, even though we know you are a very busy woman. You are a great inspiration and role model to women, children, especially us. Thank you for showing all girls that women can be leaders. If you didn't keep pursuing your dreams of helping children in hospitals and the community, some great women today might not have had the spirit to become what they are today. Thank you, Sienna and Clara, for your kind and generous words. I shared my story with you because I wanted you to understand that there are ups and downs in the journey to justice and equality for women. It is a tough journey. There are many battles on the way, but there are also many benefits. I know there are students like you in my electorate who are the leaders of tomorrow. I want you to have the courage and to know the battle is worth the victories achieved. I stand here as a proud Member of Parliament. I'm here not because I'm a woman, but because I represent my community. I'm proud to represent my country in this way. But most importantly, I'm here because I believe that good and sensible decisions in this place is what sets the foundation for our future. The decisions made every day in this place influence the very fabric of our society. The decisions in this place influence the lives of each and every one of us almost each and every day. As they say, you cannot be what you cannot see. I'm proud to be one of the many women in this place helping to enact change. I'm also proud that it's both men and women in this place who are pushing their shoulder to the wheel. Bills such as the ones debated today will help ensure that the girls of today will have a juster and fairer future. I commend the bill to this House. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
And I thank the member for Higgins for her contribution. The question is that the amendment be